I want to make a confession. I'm an engineer. How many of you know an engineer or met an engineer? Most of the audience? Okay, so you should have a fairly good view of what an engineer looks like. I would like you to close your eyes for a few seconds and just imagine that engineer, him or her, as you perceive them to be. Just a few seconds. Now open your eyes. Did he look like this? Yes? A nerdy loner who's really good in maths and physics, but really poor in social skills and communication skills? Or perhaps you might have thought of her. That's more maybe fits your perception of an engineer. A technical problem solver who just makes sure that things work. Now, I would like to challenge both of these stereotypes for engineers. For me, a great engineer today is not only a master of her technical craft, but is also a great communicator and a great collaborator. She has empathy with human challenges and focuses on not just technical performance of her creation, but also other attributes like beauty, impact to humanity and society. Let's look at a very iconic example in Gustav Eiffel. Now, Gustav Eiffel is renowned around the world for an amazing range of structures he designed and constructed. In fact, there's some examples in this country. There's a famous bridge in this town designed by Gustav Eiffel. But of course, the most famous structure that he designed and constructed is Eiffel Tower in Paris. It's an iconic landmark that is instantly recognizable. But some other facts about Gustav are not as well known. The fact that he got so much criticism and resistance about his design of the tower. Not many people know that he had to overcome those criticism, particularly from the elite circles in Paris. His design was referred to in rather unlikely, unkindly terms like a useless monster, a gigantic factory chimney. And this was his response, published in the magazine Les Tomes on 14th of February, 1887. I think it was Valentine's Day back in those days too. For my part, I believe that the tower will possess its own beauty. Are we to believe that because one is an engineer, one is not preoccupied by beauty in one's constructions? Or that one does not seek to create elegance as well as solidity and durability? Then he goes on to talk about using maths as a way of creating beauty and harmony. It is because of Gustav Eiffel's persistence and the fact that he stood up to all those loud criticism that we today have this majestic icon that marks Paris as the city of love. Fast forward today. Today's challenges are more complex than just building iconic structures. Unlike Gustav Eiffel, who had to deal with opposition from only a niche group of Parisians, in the age of social media, we have to deal with anyone who has a mobile phone and an internet connection. People want to and can have a say. I'll give you an example of a complex problem we face today. Meet the Smith family, who lived in Latrobe Valley in the state of Victoria in Australia for generations. The father of the family, right at the back on that image, recently retired from Hazelwood power station, where he worked all of his life as a boiler mechanic, just like his father did before him. The mother, who's also in the background picture, now helps her son look after the grandchildren after she had to close her hairdresser's shop. The son and his wife had always lived in the valley, but they now face an uncertain future as both of them lost their jobs when the power station closed down. You can imagine the strain that this family is going through. It seems like the town they lived in for generations is dying in front of their eyes. Put yourself in their shoes. A typical day is spent job hunting and wondering how to keep the family intact. The Smith family wonder how it came to this. Surely there must be a better way. And this is Hazelwood Power Station, a coal-fired power station that supplied nearly 1/4 of electricity of the state of Victoria in Australia. But it was also the most polluting, in fact the most polluting in the Western world. Emitted 15% of all of the greenhouse emission of the state of Victoria annually. And here's the huge mine in the foreground that supplied coal to that power station. The power station closed in June of last year, affecting a community of 14,000 people whose livelihood depended on the power station and every economic activities around it. There are lots of stories like the Smiths family, but closing down power station is only part of the human story. Can we imagine a prosperous future for this community? This is what we call a wicked problem, because there is no narrowly defined problem to which we can provide a simple, ready-made solution. In the past, if a power station closed, if it got to the end of its life, we closed it down. That's it. End of story. But today, we ask to do much more. And we have an obligation to do more. One of the most wicked problems we all face is urbanization. According to the United Nations, 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities by 2050. They will need electricity, clean water, food, and dare I say, Wi-Fi. The problem faced by Hazelwood is one that will be faced by many communities globally, as the coal-fired power stations are being decommissioned all around the world. Here in Vietnam, it is the next generation who will face this wicked problem. By 2035, the demand for energy will be 3.5 times higher than what it is today in Vietnam. But from year 2000 to 2015, energy generated by coal raised from 15% to 35% of energy production in this country. So your Hazelwood is coming. To deal with messy problems, I believe we need a new breed of engineers. I work for Aurecon, global engineering company of 7,000 people. At Aurecon, we are doing exactly that, developing engineers with a technical mastery and fearless of Gustav Eiffel, but also with a big dash of empathy for the users and communities. We take our good designers and teach them on non-technical skills like storytelling, as well as art, design thinking, game design, collaboration. This is the new face of engineers. There has to be a selfie there. Very different from the ones we saw earlier at the beginning. Now, back to the Smith family. How can the new breed of engineers help them? Can we use what exists to make a bright future for the Smiths? Let's look at the area around the mine again. Now, there is a difference in height between the cooling pond, which is associated with the power station, and the huge hole that is the mine pit. Now, we can take advantage of this height difference to install what is a combined hydroelectric dam and a pump storage installation. The cooling pond can be cleaned up and turned to a recreational facility. Or we can float some solar farms, or both. Imagine also if the surrounding areas are regenerated to become a natural reserve with grasslands, woodlands, and wetlands. How about water park at the edge of the lake? This will attract visitors and tourists and add income and jobs to the town. Continuing on the spirit of using what is there, did you know a major waste product of coal-fired power station is what's called fly ash, from which magnesium can be extracted? Now, magnesium is very useful in making electronic devices like these, mobile phones, laptops, cameras, and the like. Even the better thing is that the process of magnesium extraction is carbon neutral because CO2 is an input to the process, not the output. By some calculations, there is enough fly ash in this power station to supply 20 years of input to an extraction plant facility for magnesium. With all these technological activities taking place, there is no reason why this town shouldn't position itself as a hub for technological and energy research. So here we can turn waste to opportunity if you look at the problem through a human lens. Now, the skills of people in town are highly specialized and valuable. What if we reuse their skills in a similar industry? Let's say renewable generation at the hydro dam or solar farm. So the Smith family can retrain quickly and need not to leave their hometown. As you can see, the work we do as engineers have a big impact on human lives. If the global cohort of engineers were to be more than just technical problem solvers or solution providers, but better equipped and more involved in the problem finding process, imagine what kind of effective solutions we will have. Now, my call for action. If you're an engineer, which I hope there's some in the crowd, I urge you to stay with problems longer. Don't jump to conclusion for a solution. Be a fearless engineer or be a fearless person like Gustav Eiffel was. And have empathy for human lives and the environment your work affects. If you're a parent, and I assume there are some in the audience who are, encourage your child to become an engineer. Good. If you're young enough that you're still considering your educational or career choices, please give engineering a serious consideration. After all, much of the prosperity of humanity depends on the work we do as engineers. But unfortunately, much of the great work we do remains invisible. Together, we can make a big difference to our communities and their wicked problems. So in summary, engineers need humanity. But just as importantly, humanity needs engineers. My name is Kourosh Kayvani. I'm a human-centered engineer from Aurecon, and I'm proud of it. Thank you.